Give up your seat. We don't upgrade people like you." The words didn't echo, they detonated. In the luxury hush of a Falcon 7X private jet, Captain Elaine Marraro didn't whisper. She declared, cold, clipped, commanding. Her eyes never met the woman she was speaking to, Amara Kingston, CEO of Kingston Ventures, net worth $13 billion. The seat in question wasn't just first class, it was 1A. Hers, assigned, confirmed. And yet a man in a luxury suit tossed a check toward the cockpit and claimed it instead. "This seat's mine now." He smirked. Elaine nodded like it was law, like bribery was boarding policy, like power had a dress code and Amara didn't qualify. But what they didn't know, what not a single person aboard realized, was this. Amara Kingston wasn't just a passenger. She was the buyer. And in 1 hour, this plane, this company, and everyone who disrespected her would answer to her. Because this wasn't humiliation. It was documentation. Before we dive into what happened next, leave a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another story of justice, redemption, and power reclaimed. The cabin was a cocoon of wealth and hierarchy, wrapped in the pristine sterility of brushed leather, polished steel, and chilled champagne. But beneath the surface of luxury, something acidic simmered. Amara Kingston sat still in seat 1A. She didn't fidget. She didn't plead. Her tailored gray sweater and matte slacks didn't sparkle like jewelry, but they didn't need to. Her presence alone was crafted by years of empire building, not embellishment. And yet, to Captain Elaine Marraro, that presence was invisible. "You've been unlisted," Elaine said without blinking. "Per flight command." "By whom?" Amara asked, voice level. Elaine crossed her arms. "By me. From seat 2C, Roland Pierce White." Smug wealthy in appearance and arrogance laughed as if the matter was already closed. "You heard her, sweetheart. This ain't coach." The Falcon 7X had only 12 seats each, a statement. And yet, this statement reeked of erasure. At the rear, Caden Reed, a travel vlogger with nearly 2 million subscribers, lifted his phone. No dramatic angles, no commentary, just quiet, steady recording. His lens captured not chaos, but a calculated ritual of dismissal. Maya Torres, a civil rights attorney seated near the emergency exit, saw it too. She leaned to Caden and whispered, "Don't post yet. Let her decide." But Caden's fingers twitched. The story was already uploading, already viral. Amara's phone buzzed. She pressed a single button. "Lena," she said, summoning her assistant. "We're recording, ma'am," Lena's voice replied. "Legal's already notified." Roland reached forward and snatched the tablet from Amara's lap, hurling it against the cabin wall. It cracked like a gunshot. Lucas Gray, a luxury fraud investigator in seat 3A, stood up. "That's assault." Elaine turned sharply. "Stay out of this." "No," Lucas said, "because what you're doing isn't just unethical. It's illegal." Amara rose. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't yell. She stood with the kind of silence that echoes louder than thunder. "You've just made a mistake," she said softly. Eyes locked on Elaine. "That'll cost this airline everything." Elaine scoffed. "You think I'm scared of your bluff?" "No," Amara replied. "You're scared of the truth." At age 21, Amara had been denied access to the National Aviation Summit, a conference on innovation in flight leadership. She had shown up early, business card in hand, only to be told by a white executive, "Your presence doesn't fit our image." She didn't cry. She built. By 38, she acquired majority control of Kingston Aviation Holdings. And now, at 44, she sat in a jet chartered through Horizon Star Charters, the same airline she'd quietly begun acquiring shares of 6 months ago. Elaine didn't know that. Neither did Roland. But they were about to. "You're off the elite roster," Elaine repeated. "Security will remove you." At that cue, Zoe Quinn, a 28-year-old flight attendant, hesitated as she appeared beside Elaine. "Captain?" she whispered, eyes on the manifest she's listed. Elaine hissed, "Then mark her removed." Zoe froze. Stephen Holt, the first officer, stood just behind the galley curtain, clipboard in hand, expression uneasy. Stephen Elaine barked log her as unauthorized. Incident code passenger fraud. He looked to Zoe, then to Amara, then at the clipboard, shaking in his hand. "You're calling me a fraud?" Amara asked quietly. Stephen opened his mouth and lied. "Passenger Amara Kingston is not on the verified elite roster," he said. The room tilted. Roland grinned, but Lucas didn't move. He reached into Roland's briefcase and pulled out a folded paper. To Elaine. "For seat 1A, $7,500. No questions." Gasps rippled. Zoe backed away. Elaine stepped forward. "That proves nothing," Roland barked. "No," Amara replied. "It proves everything." She turned back to Zoe. "You checked me in. Did I provide ID?" Zoe nodded faintly. "Yes, ma'am. And did I match the manifest?" "Yes." Zoe said louder. "You did." "Thank you," Amara said. "Now let's talk about real fraud." Elaine's nostrils flared. "Security will escort you." "Call them," Amara replied. "And you'll see who really leaves this aircraft." The tension climbed like cabin pressure before a stall. Lucas looked at his phone. "We're live streaming. The world is watching." Elaine snapped to Stephen again. "Call for removal." Stephen's voice cracked. "I can't." Elaine narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me." Stephen turned, finally facing Amara, finally letting the lie slip from his throat like poison being purged. "I deleted your reservation," he admitted. "She told me to." The cabin gasped again. Elaine's grip on command cracked. "You sabotaged her," Lucas said. For him, Stephen looked down. And then the climax. Amara turned to her phone and said, "Lena, connect me to Tessa. Initiate legal protocol." "Connected, ma'am," Lena replied. Elaine stared, jaw clenched. Roland laughed. "You think you can bluff your way into power?" Amara smiled for the first time. "I'm not bluffing." She looked him dead in the eye. "I'm buying the airline." The declaration hung in the air like a silent detonation. "I'm buying the airline," Amara had said, calm, factual, unshaken. But it didn't feel real. Not to Elaine. Not to Roland. Not even to the crew. And yet, the power dynamics shifted instantly. Like cabin pressure recalibrating mid-flight, everyone felt it. Elaine's face twitched, caught between disbelief and fear. "You think money lets you make threats?" she snapped. "No," Amara replied, "but truth does. And I'm not threatening. I'm executing." Roland rose from his seat like a stage villain huffing indignantly. "This is outrageous. I paid for my seat. This is mine." "You paid for silence," Lucas cut in. "But what you bought was exposure." Elaine reached for her intercom. "Ground security, prepare for boarding. Passenger disturbance on Falcon 7X. But the cockpit speaker crackled in response. "Captain Marraro, this is dispatch. We've received a legal hold alert from Kingston Ventures regarding Flight 347. Stand by for clarification." Elaine's knuckles whitened. Caden Reed whispered to Maya. "Did she really just lock the whole dispatch system?" "She didn't lock it," Maya replied. "She owns it now." Zoe Quinn stood silently, behind Elaine, eyes darting between faces. Her training had taught her protocol, but nothing in her manual covered corporate takeovers at 30,000 feet. Elaine turned to her. "Say something. Back me up." Zoe opened her mouth, then closed it. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Stephen Holt clipboard, still trembling in his hands, finally sat down in the jump seat. We're in over our heads. Amara didn't flinch. She tapped her phone again. Lena, how long? Lena's voice came steady over speaker. Legal confirmations in place. Acquisition paperwork sent to Horizon Star Holdings. Tessa will confirm receipt in moments. We're green-lighted. Roland scoffed. You can't do this. There are laws, boards, approvals. There are receipts, Lucas said, holding up the $7,500 check again. Want to talk about laws? Sit down, Roland Amara said quietly. Elaine turned on Lucas. You're not part of this. Lucas stepped forward. Wrong? I'm a witness. And a citizen. And I'm done letting people like you erase power with paperwork. Suddenly, Amara's phone buzzed again. She looked down. Her calm expression sharpened. Tessa's verified a flag, she said, looking up at Elaine. There's been a coordinated effort from your crew to obstruct the acquisition. Financial reports were tampered with. Staff communications hidden. You tried to sabotage the buyout. Elaine froze. That's absurd. Amara raised the phone. You'll want to hear this yourself. She tapped a button. Tessa's voice rang through the cabin. Elaine Marraro, Stephen Holt, Zoe Quinn. You're named in a legal affidavit for obstructing a corporate acquisition through falsified logs and discriminatory practices. All statements, deleted files, and testimonies have been recovered. Stephen looked like he might vomit. Elaine stood rooted. And then the climax. From the rear cabin, a quiet voice rose. Excuse me, said a passenger who had remained silent until now. Everyone turned. It was Imani Wells, 25 years old, dressed in minimalist jewelry, soft denim, and confidence recently wounded. I was profiled before I even sat down, she said, eyes locked on Elaine. You made me open my purse for a random search while letting 2 other passengers board without checks. Elaine narrowed her eyes. That's not true. Imani pulled out her phone. It's time-stamped. Want to see? She hit play. The footage showed Elaine waving through 2 white male passengers while simultaneously pulling Imani aside. Elaine's voice on the recording. It's a safety sweep. Imani's voice shaken. Why me? Elaine's reply. Just a feeling. Silence filled the cabin. Even Caden stopped recording, stunned. That's enough, Maya said quietly. This is no longer an incident. It's a pattern. Elaine looked at Stephen. Back me up. Stephen stood. No. I deleted Amara's seat. I covered up complaints. And I lied. Elaine's authority collapsed in that moment. The way a failing engine doesn't scream, it simply dies. Amara stepped into the aisle, her voice low, her posture unwavering. You tried to deny my seat. You tried to erase my presence. But what you really did, Captain, was show everyone who you are. She turned to Derek Vance, the security officer, who had quietly boarded during the chaos. Mr. Vance, she said calmly, please note that Roland Pierce is not a listed passenger, and his bribe has been documented. He is to be removed. Derek paused, eyes flicking between Elaine and Amara, and then he nodded. Yes, ma'am. He moved toward Roland. You can't do this, Roland shouted. She's not in charge. Amara's reply was a whisper. I am now. And with that, the door to the next chapter creaked open. The aircraft door hissed shut behind Roland Pierce as security escorted him down the air stairs. But inside the cabin, the silence didn't relax, it thickened. Something had shifted. Authority once draped over Captain Elaine Marraro like a badge now hung on her like a stain. Amara remained near the front aisle, still composed. Her voice was calm, but it resonated with something heavier than anger. Command earned, not demanded. Let's be clear, she said. This is no longer a matter of seat assignment. It's a matter of integrity. Elaine barked, "You're not in charge of this aircraft." "Not yet," Amara answered. "But every second you continue to lie digs your hole deeper, and the whole world is watching now." Behind her, Caden Reed's live stream continued climbing 90,000 viewers and rising. The chat swarmed with disbelief and outrage. Zoe Quinn remained frozen at the rear galley, her service napkin twisted in her hands like a nervous prayer. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was nearly a whisper. "She's telling the truth. Amara Kingston was properly listed. Her ID was verified. And I was told to delete the complaint logs." Elaine turned fire in her eyes. "You are way out of line." But Zoe didn't back down this time. "You told me to profile passengers who didn't look elite," she said louder now. "You said it was just quiet safety policy." Several passengers stirred. Imani Wells sat forward. "That's the same lie you told me when you made me unpack my purse." Maya Torres stood. "Captain Marraro, how many more lies do we need before this becomes a criminal investigation?" Elaine's mouth opened, but the words fumbled. Stephen Holt, still seated, added quietly. "She ran her own protocol sessions, called them pre-screening briefings, but it was just training us to scan by race." Even Derek, the security officer, blinked at that. "That's not policy," he said. "That's profiling." Zoe stepped into the aisle now. "I kept the bias complaint log. I didn't destroy it." Amara turned to her slowly. "You have it." Zoe nodded. "In my personal bag. 8 entries in the last month alone." "Bring it forward," Amara said. Zoe hesitated, then moved. She passed Elaine, who hissed, "You're throwing away your career." "No," Zoe replied. "I'm finally doing something with it." She handed the folded, slightly crumpled log to Amara, who unfolded it in full view of the cabin. 8 entries. Same handwriting. Same signs. All suppressed. "Thank you," Amara said. "This will be submitted to federal oversight within the hour." Elaine snapped, "That's stolen documentation." "It was never yours to hide," Maya interjected. "It belongs to every passenger you wronged." And then the climax. From behind the curtain, the cockpit intercom activated again. A new voice, deeper, older, ragged with experience, came through. "This is Captain Harold Deakins, former senior pilot with Horizon Star. I've just watched the live feed. I retired last year, and I want to say something before I go silent forever." Elaine stiffened. "I knew what was happening. I saw the favoritism. I saw the flags. I buried reports because I was told morale mattered more than truth. But that wasn't morale. It was silence. And silence is cowardice." The cabin went still. Even Elaine said nothing. Amara slowly raised her eyes toward the speaker above her. "Thank you, Captain Deakins. The truth may come late, but it lands all the same." The passengers didn't clap. They didn't need to. They watched as something far more rare unfolded, a quiet rebellion. One where voices trembled but still rose, where secrets cracked open not with rage but resolve. Elaine turned once more to Derek. "You will escort her off this aircraft." Derek looked at Amara, then back to Elaine. "No, Captain, I will not." "You're breaching protocol." "No, I'm following conscience." Elaine's jaw clenched. "Then I will log you for insubordination." Derek turned to the passengers. "If standing against injustice gets me logged, I'll sign it myself." Amara walked toward him and extended a hand. "You'll have a new post waiting," she said, "at Freedom Air." Caden's camera shook slightly as he gasped. "Is that the new name?" Amara nodded once. "Horizon Star ends today." She turned to the passengers. "This cabin isn't just watching history, it's writing it." She faced Elaine. "And you can either step down with some grace Amara paused. Or be escorted out when the papers are signed. Elaine didn't answer, but the curtain behind her had already fallen. The folded paper in Amara's hand wasn't heavy, not physically, but the weight it carried was seismic. 8 bias complaints, logged by Zoe, buried by Elaine, hidden from the main system, like crumbs swept beneath a rug no one was supposed to lift. But now it was wide open, and the entire cabin had seen it. Zoe stood next to Amara, shoulders square, despite the tremble in her breath. "I didn't destroy them," she repeated. "I couldn't." "You did the right thing," Amara said. Her voice measured. Elaine was pacing now, pacing the narrow aisle like a caged executive. "This is a show. That's what this is. A well-rehearsed ambush." No Captain Maya Torres replied, rising. "It's a reckoning." Derek Vance, still stationed mid-cabin, turned toward Zoe. "Did she ask you to delete these?" Zoe nodded. Not just once, repeatedly. Elaine exploded. "You have no idea what kind of pressure we're under to maintain optics in elite-class operations. Sometimes calls have to be made in the name of experience." Lucas shot back. "Experience doesn't justify exclusion." Stephen Holt sat motionless in the jump seat, his voice hollow. "I went along with it. I locked the complaints behind a firewall on our local drive. Told a T it was a data purge." Maya turned to him, incredulous. "You covered it up. I was told it would jeopardize my rank if I didn't," he said, barely above a whisper. Zoe stepped forward. "I have backups, screenshots, timestamps." Amara reached into her bag and pulled out a small black tablet. She handed it to Lena, who stood silently behind her. "Forward all copies to our legal team, and to the FAA complaint board." "Yes, ma'am," Lena replied, fingers already flying across the screen. Elaine's breath hitched. "You're not part of this airline's executive structure." Amara looked at her. "Not yet," she said. "But acquisition papers are in progress. And given what we've just documented, this airline is already losing any negotiation leverage it had." The cabin fell into another round of stunned quiet. Then Caden Reed spoke, adjusting his live stream camera slightly. "This has crossed 300,000 live viewers. It's trending worldwide now. Hashtag seat for sale just broke Twitter." Elaine's complexion blanched. Zoe whispered, "She's going viral." Amara didn't even glance at the feed. Her eyes remained on Elaine. "I didn't make this public. Your behavior did." Maya stepped beside Zoe. "And the real problem isn't the video. It's the pattern." From the side galley, a voice emerged. "I can confirm that said Gregory Liu, the crew's back-end operations auditor, who had boarded quietly through the service stairwell during the commotion." Elaine turned. "Gregory." He held up a tablet. "I've been running internal audits for Horizon Star's compliance division. These complaint logs were part of an internal red flag sequence until they were deleted." Lucas arched a brow. "So this goes beyond." Elaine Gregory hesitated. "There's a paper trail. Some of it leads up. Higher than this flight." Elaine stepped forward, her voice sharpening. "You're violating chain of command. No, Gregory said I'm following federal law." Then the climax. Elaine lunged. She didn't throw a punch, didn't shout. She snatched the bias log from Amara's hand and attempted to rip it apart. But Zoe moved fast, grabbing Elaine's wrist. The page tore halfway. But Amara didn't react. Instead, Lena lifted her phone and calmly said, "Recording now." Multiple witnesses. Attempted destruction of evidence. Derek stepped forward. Captain, step away. Elaine, realizing what she had just done and on camera, let the paper drop. Amara bent, picked up the torn log, and straightened it out. "Thank you," she said to Zoe. Elaine backed away, her power draining like voltage from a severed wire. "This airline will burn," she muttered. "No," Amara said. "It'll be rebuilt." Stephen stood suddenly, clearing his throat. "There's more." Everyone turned to him. He looked at Amara. "You should know. Elaine circulated false financial projections to block your acquisition. She doctored crew satisfaction scores. She told the board your interest in Horizon Star was performative, just PR." Amara didn't blink. "Did you participate?" "I didn't stop her," he said. "Then you're complicit," Maya said flatly. Stephen nodded. "I'm ready to cooperate. Fully." Amara stepped into the aisle. To everyone who wants to stay on the right side of history, she said, "This is the moment." And behind her, Maya said what everyone was thinking. "This isn't an incident. It's a mutiny." The aircraft remained grounded, but power had already taken flight. A whisper spread through the cabin, not from mouths, but from movements. A shift in posture. A glance between seats. A ripple of realization. The passengers were no longer watching a confrontation. They were living inside a revolution. Amara Kingston, standing steady in the aisle of a grounded Falcon 7X, had just heard Stephen confess to falsifying reports. Gregory Liu, the compliance auditor, confirmed buried complaints. And Zoe, trembling but brave, held the final key proof of systemic bias, logged suppressed, and now finally revealed. Elaine stood near the cockpit, boxed in by the truths unspooling around her like loose wires. "I demand control of this aircraft," she snapped. "You lost it." Maya Torres said the moment you prioritized prejudice over protocol. From seat 2B, Imani Wells slowly stood up again. When I was forced to unpack my purse for a random check, I knew it wasn't random, but I stayed quiet because I thought nobody would believe me. Now she held her phone high. I have it all. The moment. The date. Her face. Elaine barked, "You're violating privacy laws." Caden Reed, still live streaming, laughed bitterly. "You violated humanity. We're just recording the damage." Passenger after passenger rose to speak. I was ignored for service. They moved my seat without explanation. They questioned my ID and not the man beside me. One voice, then another. Some shaking, some strong, all building. Zoe's voice cracked as she spoke again. She made me flag women of color in the crew notes. She said it was a pre-clearance directive from above. But it was just her. Elaine turned to Gregory. "You have to stop this." Gregory shook his head. "No, Captain. I'm forwarding this footage directly to the Internal Ethics Committee and FAA." Amara turned slowly to face the cabin. "This isn't just about me anymore. It never was." She looked at Imani. "It's about every person who was told they didn't belong on a plane they paid for." Maya stepped forward, holding a small leather folder. "This is my legal credentials. I'm invoking Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. This is now a documented discrimination incident involving interstate transportation." Elaine hissed. "You're not law enforcement." "No," Maya replied. "I'm worse. I'm accountability." Just then, the jet's onboard comm unit lit up. A voice came over the line. "Attention Falcon 7X crew, this is Legal Ops from Horizon Star Corporate. We are aware of an escalating incident involving Captain Elaine Marraro. All actions aboard Flight 347 are now under formal review. Flight is grounded. Hold all position." Elaine looked like she had been slapped. "This is my aircraft," she muttered. "Not anymore," Amara said. And then the climax. A man in his 70s, quiet until now, stood in row 6. "My name is Thomas Yates," he said, voice steady. "Former FAA investigator, retired 3 years ago, but I've seen what this is before, and I'll submit my name to the witness list." Elaine blinked. Yates continued, "I've watched discrimination get swept under wings. But today, I'm going to be part of something better." He held up his own phone. "Recording. Signed. Statement ready." The cabin fell still. Then slowly, passengers began to clap. Not thunderously, not for show, but with purpose. Zoe was crying. Stephen sat, slumped, wordless. Elaine was alone. Derek Vance stepped into the center aisle. "Until this acquisition is complete, I'm designating the remainder of this flight under immediate administrative lockdown. Captain Marraro, you are relieved of active command." Elaine opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Amara nodded once. "Thank you, Officer Vance." And just like that, the passengers weren't passengers anymore. They were witnesses, allies, a crew of their own choosing. The revolt didn't come from rage, it came from truth. The atmosphere aboard the Falcon 7X was no longer merely tense, it was electric. Authority had shifted not with a scream, but a series of quiet revolts one after another. Elaine Marraro stood pale and isolated, flanked by the silence of her former crew and the rising unity of her passengers. Then, over the intercom, a voice crackled to life again. "This is Horizon Star Ground Command. Attention Falcon 7X. All crew members are to remain in position. We have received legal documentation indicating a pending ownership transition." Elaine's head snapped up. "What?" "Until further notice, command protocol is suspended. Flight status grounded. Authority neutralized pending verification." Derek Vance glanced toward Amara, who remained still, hand loosely clutching her phone, eyes locked on the cabin door, as if she could already see the change walking in. Elaine stepped forward. "You can't just cancel my command over a call." But no one responded, not even Stephen, who had once followed her every word. He sat slouched in the jump seat clipboard, discarded expression hollow. Zoe stood near the service panel, whispering to Lena, forwarding timestamps and backup complaint files. Her hands trembled, but they didn't stop. Maya Torres remained in her seat, typing quickly on her tablet. "I've submitted the Title VI complaint to the FAA. They just acknowledged receipt." Elaine shouted across the cabin. "You're all going to regret this." "No," Amara said softly. "You are." Suddenly, a new ping buzzed from Lena's tablet. She looked at Amara. "It's Tessa," Lena said. "She's patched in from the legal transition office. Urgent." Amara tapped her earpiece and nodded once. "Put her through." Tessa's voice boomed across the cabin speakers. "Calm, polished, surgical. Effective immediately per emergency provision 19.2 of the Kingston Horizon Transition Agreement. Captain Elaine Marraro is suspended pending full legal and ethical investigation." Elaine gasped. Her actions aboard this flight constitute breach of ethics, dereliction of duty, and obstruction of private equity procedures in motion. Passengers murmured. Cameras stayed trained. Even the hum of the air system seemed to still. Tessa continued. "Authority is now designated under interim leadership, advised by legal counsel, until the full acquisition is completed." Amara took a breath. "Thank you, Tessa." Elaine staggered back into the cockpit doorway like the words had physically hit her. "I built this route," she whispered. "I trained this crew. I managed this fleet." Amara turned slowly toward her. "And now you'll be remembered for betraying it." Elaine turned to Derek. "You can't enforce this." "I can," he replied. "And I will." Then the climax. The jet's forward hatch hissed as it unlocked. Every head turned. A woman stepped aboard, dressed in black slacks, a charcoal blazer, and a gold Horizon Star legal badge. Her name was Tessa Vaughn. In person. Elaine's voice broke. "You flew in." Tessa didn't answer. She walked down the aisle with the confidence of a judge entering a courtroom. She stopped in front of Amara. "I'm here to execute the clause." She opened a leather case and pulled out 2 folders. One for the FAA, one for the Department of Transportation. All filings verified. Asset freeze begins now. Elaine charged forward. You can't freeze the company. Tessa didn't flinch. We're not freezing the company, just the parts corrupted by you. She turned to Amara. Your remaining shares clear at 11:45 a.m. You'll hold full controlling interest in Horizon Star as of noon. Maya stood and raised a hand. Is that? Today, Tessa nodded. Yes. The passengers gasped. Lucas dropped his stylus. Imani clutched her necklace. Amara's lips curled not into a smirk, but something stronger. Resolve. Zoe, barely able to believe what she was seeing, whispered, It's done. Not yet, Amara said. But it's about to be. Elaine stumbled back against the cockpit bulkhead. No. Tessa faced her one last time. You will be barred from re-entering Horizon Star property, its aircraft or its data systems, until a full federal inquiry is complete. Derek turned to Elaine. Captain Marraro, I need your badge. Elaine froze, but she knew it was over. With shaking hands, she unpinned the gleaming wings from her chest and dropped them into Derek's palm. They clinked against his clipboard with the finality of a gavel. The cabin didn't cheer. Not yet. They were holding their breath for the landing. The badge clinked against Derek's clipboard like a closing door. Captain Elaine Marraro stood breathless. Her wings removed her voice, gone. All the authority she had once wielded now sat in a small metal pin on someone else's clipboard. And yet, the silence that followed wasn't one of fear. It was something different. Respect. A dawning awareness, something sacred and rarely felt on an aircraft justice in real time. Amara didn't move immediately. She let the moment hold. Let the silence speak what words could not. For years, women like her had been told to wait to comply, to accept discomfort as the cost of success. But not today. Today, silence wasn't surrender. It was strength. Zoe stood still, tears streaking quietly down her cheeks. Derek, stone-faced, stepped to the front of the aircraft and sealed the captain's badge in a labeled evidence envelope. By order of Horizon Star Legal and FAA observation, he said, Captain Marraro is no longer authorized to operate or command any vessel affiliated with the company. Elaine slumped into the galley jump seat. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her body was still, but her silence now came from disbelief, not dignity. Gregory Liu, the compliance officer, glanced toward Amara. Would you like to assume interim control? Amara shook her head. Not yet. There's one more truth to come to light. From the back of the cabin, Lucas leaned forward, sensing the shift. What's left? Amara's eyes landed gently on Zoe. Ms. Quinn, she said softly, you mentioned there were more records. Zoe nodded, stepped to her carry-on bag, and slowly removed a smaller folder. It was sealed in a clear sleeve, marked with Horizon Star's internal complaint tracking watermark. I was told to destroy this too, Zoe said. I didn't. She handed it to Amara. Inside were not just complaints, but names. 8 crew members, 4 gate staff, 2 regional managers, every one of them linked to conduct similar to Elaine's, all protected by a quiet system that let prejudice pose as policy. Zoe's voice cracked. They created a blacklist, a code profile that marked certain passengers and even some junior crew. If you didn't look elite, you were marked, even if you had ID, even if you were confirmed. It was never about safety. Maya gasped. It was about segregation. Caden's livestream continued to roll. Over 500,000 viewers now. Hashtags multiply 'em. Amara owns the skies boarding while Black Freedom Flight. Amara turned to Lena. Add these files to the Equity Board's launch case. Yes, ma'am, Lena said, her voice steady. Zoe took a step back, but Amara stepped forward. You were told to erase these voices, she said gently. But you didn't. Zoe nodded. I was afraid. You should have been, Amara said honestly. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing anyway. Lucas whispered to Maya. This isn't just corporate change. This is cultural realignment at 40,000 feet. And then the climax. A new voice came over the intercom. This is Control Tower 4. Horizon Star acquisition request confirmed. Final papers reviewed. Amara Kingston now holds 100% controlling interest effective immediately. All transition commands will route through her office. Elaine let out a sound that was not quite a scream. More like the collapse of breath she no longer had the right to take. Derek looked to Amara. You now have command authority. What are your first orders? Amara turned to face the cabin. To the passengers, she said, I begin with this. No one will be removed. Not now. Not ever again for the color of their skin, the name on their boarding pass, or the calm with which they respond to cruelty. Maya's eyes welled up. Imani held her phone to her chest, recording, but no longer commenting. Just breathing it in. Today, Amara continued. We ground not just a plane, but an entire legacy of disrespect. She paused. And we rebuild one that lifts everyone. She turned to Elaine, still slumped in the jump seat. You thought silence meant submission, but today silence became a weapon. The kind that records, the kind that listens, the kind that turns into strength. Elaine said nothing. She had no more commands to give, no crew to command. The passengers began to rise quietly, respectfully, not in celebration, but in solidarity. They weren't just on a flight anymore. They were part of a movement. The cabin of the Falcon 7X felt transformed, not by altitude or design, but by something heavier: accountability. Elaine Maroro, once the most commanding voice on board, now sat slumped in silence, stripped of authority title and uniform wings. Her voice hadn't returned since the intercom announcement that Amara Kingston now held 100% controlling interest in Horizon Star. The woman who had been told to give up her seat was now in full command of the entire fleet, and everyone knew it. Amara stood calmly at the head of the cabin, her voice no louder than it needed to be. Power doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it arrives in the seat no one thought you deserved. Her gaze drifted toward the cockpit. Derek has security confirmed Maroro's clearance revoked. He nodded. FAA's official. Badge logged. Access deactivated. Elaine exhaled slowly. You'll regret this, Kingston. You've humiliated a decorated veteran. No, Amara replied. You humiliated yourself. I just turned on the lights. Zoe Quinn remained posted at the galley, now joined by Gregory Liu, who had pulled up a digital log of crew data on his device. We've initiated the first steps for ethical audits across 5 regional flight crews, he said. Amara nodded. Cross-reference it with Zoe's complaint archive. Nothing gets buried again. From her seat, Maya Torres added, The FAA's Civil Rights Division confirmed they're watching this live. They've already begun pulling Horizon Star's 5-year crew metrics. Stephen Holt rubbed his eyes, face pale. They're going to find everything. Then it's time, Amara said, for all of it to come out. From the passenger rows, murmurs of agreement rose, not angry, but awakened. Then came a voice from the rear. I have something, a woman said. It was Candace Liu, a flight nurse and off-duty paramedic, seated in 4C. She stood holding up her phone. I took pictures before boarding, she said. Elaine had a paper manifest manually redacted, passenger names scribbled out. I thought it was odd. I snapped it just in case. She walked the aisle and handed the phone to Lena. Amara scanned the image. 2 names were erased, hers and another woman. Zoe gasped. That's the pre-flight version I logged. She altered it manually. Gregory tapped his tablet. Cross-checking? She submitted a fake manifest. Elaine's voice cracked. That was for balancing. We were over manifest. No, Stephen said suddenly. You wanted to hide Amara from internal reports. I saw you do it. You said, and I quote, "I don't want this flight to look like a diversity ad." The silence that followed was not quiet. It was electric. Then the climax. Amara turned to Derek. Escort her off the aircraft. Elaine's eyes widened. You can't. I can, Amara said. Because this plane, this company is mine. Elaine stood shaky but defiant. I'll appeal. You'll see me in court. Amara nodded slowly. Good. Then we'll let a federal judge see the altered manifest, the deleted complaint logs, the bias training Zoe was forced to attend, and the $7,500 bribe you accepted from Roland Pierce. You can't prove that Lena tapped the tablet. Already sent to legal, she said. Elaine staggered toward the air stairs. But before she reached the door, Amara called out one final time. Elaine. She turned. You'll be remembered for this, Amara said. Not for the flights you captained, but for the moment you tried to erase someone who didn't look like you. Elaine paused, and then disappeared down the stairs, vanishing into history like an outdated policy. Zoe wiped her cheeks. Stephen stayed seated, silent. Gregory looked toward Amara. What now? Amara exhaled. We finish this. She stepped forward into the aisle, not with fury, but with focus, with command. Every passenger who raised their voice today will be heard. Every witness, every log, every truth hidden behind procedure will be entered into record. Maya stood beside her. We'll back you, legally, publicly, financially. Imani nodded. We already are. The power had shifted, not just to Amara, but to everyone once told they didn't belong. The jet cabin had gone quiet again, but not like before. This wasn't silence from fear or control or compliance. It was the eye of a storm, calm, suspended, but surrounded by the wreckage of everything that came before and the reckoning that was still to come. Elaine Marraro was gone, escorted off the aircraft, stripped of command. And yet Amara Kingston didn't relax. Not yet. Because every revolution, even the ones fought with silence and proof, carried an aftershock. She remained in the aisle flanked by Maya, Zoe, and Lena. Gregory Liu reviewed legal filings from his tablet. Corporate transition documents are processing through federal review. You're now listed on all internal systems as interim executive chair. Amara didn't smile. How long before it becomes permanent? Hours, Gregory replied. Maybe minutes. It depends on how quickly the other Horizon Star shareholders respond. They'll respond, Maya said, her voice low. They've seen the video. The live stream had stopped. Caden Reed, after more than 600,000 viewers, finally turned off his feed. Not out of boredom, but because he sensed something sacred was happening. Something that deserved a break from the commentary. He looked around the cabin. Passengers weren't clapping anymore. They were remembering. Reevaluating every random seating reassignment, every brushed-off upgrade, every unspoken look they'd endured without recourse. Imani Wells sat quietly by the window fingers, still clutching her purse. All this time I thought I was imagining it. You weren't, Zoe said gently. From the galley, Stephen Holt rose. I have something to say. The cabin turned. He looked older now, like the guilt had aged him. I lied. A lot. To protect the system. To protect Elaine. I falsified seating logs. I let her influence hiring rosters. I ignored at least 4 complaints because she told me they were overreactions. He looked at Amara. I know it doesn't erase anything, but I want it on the record. I don't want to carry it anymore. Amara nodded. Then let the record reflect it. Gregory logged the statement, tagging the file as Voluntary Witness 1. Maya whispered to Lena, "He'll be useful in court, if he cooperates fully." Amara walked back down the aisle toward seat 1A. Her seat. She didn't sit. Not yet. She stood beside it, fingers resting on the headrest like she was grounding herself. She looked at the passengers. This was supposed to be a short flight, she said, but it turned into a much longer journey. Zoe stepped beside her. "When I joined the crew, I thought I was becoming part of something professional, elite. But it was just performative." She turned to the passengers. "I saw good people denied basics, kindness, water, comfort. Not because we lacked it, but because we were told to prioritize optics. You were never the problem." The script we were handed was, Derek Vance, now assuming de facto head of operations on board, nodded. "This flight is grounded for inspection, but that grounding doesn't have to mean delay. It can mean reflection." He stepped into the aisle. "Everyone on board is invited to file witness reports. You will not be ignored, not under her leadership." He gestured to Amara. Still, she didn't sit. Instead, she turned to Lena. "How are we looking on asset control?" Lena responded without hesitation. "Systems have rerouted through Freedom Air's shadow protocols. We're ready for total transition as soon as the final shareholder approvals arrive. Legal has already blocked internal sabotage attempts. Stephen's testimony secured that." Maya looked up. "This is the eye Amara. The storm's past, but the next wave will be how you rebuild." Amara nodded slowly. "We don't just fire people. We build systems that prevent what happened today from happening again." She finally sat in seat 1A, for the first time, not as a denied passenger, not as a billionaire executive, but as the rightful authority aboard. The cabin shifted again. Lucas Grace leaned across the aisle. "Do you realize what this is going to do to the industry?" "I do," Amara said softly. From the forward bulkhead, a low chime rang. Gregory glanced down at his tablet and blinked, then smiled. "Ms. Kingston, he said they've confirmed. Shareholder votes just cleared. Horizon Star Charters is now yours." She didn't react. Not dramatically. No cheer. No fist in the air. She simply whispered, "Then it begins." And the passengers didn't clap. They nodded. Because some storms don't end in applause. They end in change. The confirmation had arrived. Amara Kingston now owned Horizon Star Charters outright. But ownership didn't mean obedience. Not yet. The air inside the Falcon 7X was taut with pressure. Again, not the altitude kind, but the kind that builds when some still refuse to acknowledge the truth, even as it swallows them whole. Stephen Holt remained seated near the forward galley, pale reflective. Zoe Quinn stood nearby, still clutching her sealed bias folder like it was a lifeline, and confession rolled into one. Derek Vance had assumed tactical command, overseeing the passenger manifest and securing evidence from the cockpit. Amara sat poised in seat 1A, not reclining into power, but shouldering it. Yet something was off. Lena leaned in from across the aisle. "Gregory just pinged us," she whispered. "System flags show a data breach from a crew device, an attempted purge." Amara stiffened. From who? Lena tapped her tablet. Unverified. But it's coming from someone on board. Before they could speak again, Emily Walsh, a senior flight technician, pushed out from the service galley. She looked nervous, sweating despite the cool cabin. "Captain Kingston," she said quickly, "I need to clarify something before this gets out of hand. The use of captain wasn't lost on anyone." Amara nodded. "Go ahead." Emily glanced at Stephen, then Zoe, then Lena. "I was part of the scheduling rotation for elite-class crews. Last year, Elaine told me not to assign Zoe to certain VIP flights. She said it would ruin optics. I argued once. After that, my shifts were cut. Amara narrowed her eyes. You documented this. I did, Emily replied. But I didn't submit it. I was scared. Maya stood up from row 2C, scared of what Emily's hands trembled, of becoming what Zoe became a token, visible when convenient, invisible when real choices had to be made. Zoe's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. Then, from the rear jump seat, a new voice entered. We all knew what was happening. It was Marcus Denton, the loadmaster. His arms were crossed, face unreadable. Elaine didn't act alone, he said. She had buy-in. From people who thought protecting the brand meant hiding the rot. Emily's eyes widened. You were part of it. Marcus shook his head. No, but I stayed quiet. And that's the same thing. Then, the climax. Gregory's voice came over the intercom again. Be advised, an internal data purge attempt has been traced to Emily Walsh's device. Files tagged ZQ Training Archive and HR Exclusion Protocol were scheduled for deletion. Gasps filled the cabin. Emily stepped back. That's not possible. I didn't authorize that. Lena held up her tablet. The system logged your credentials, time-stamped at 0943. Emily turned to Zoe, desperate. I swear I didn't delete anything. Elaine must have planted something in my access. Zoe's face was unreadable. You kept the logs, but you also kept them hidden. Stephen slowly stood. We all have to choose now, truth or legacy. Amara stood again. Emily, if you're honest, cooperate. Turn over your device. Emily swallowed, nodded, and unlocked her company tablet, handing it to Derek. He plugged it into the verification module. Gregory's voice came through again. Confirmed. Attempted deletion was automated. Triggered remotely through Elaine's Captain override key. Walsh's device was used, but she didn't press the button. Relief washed over Emily's face. Maya sighed. She tried to burn the trail on her way out. Amara took a deep breath. Then, let's put out every fire she started. Zoe finally stepped forward, her voice calm. Emily, if you want to make it right, help me review those logs. We submit them together. Emily nodded slowly. Yes, let's do it. Derek addressed the remaining crew. Anyone else with knowledge of Elaine's system, now's your moment. Speak up or stay complicit. Marcus raised a hand. I'll help. I've seen things. Enough to know this wasn't an isolated incident. Amara nodded. Then we start cleaning. The uprising hadn't been loud. It hadn't needed to be, because silence was no longer the language of power. The crew wasn't fractured. They were realigning. Amara Kingston stood in the center aisle, not as a passenger, not even just a CEO, but now as the active commander of a grounded jet whose very air seemed rewritten by what had just unfolded. The crew fractured by fear, shaken by truth, was now realigning. Stephen Holt had confessed. Zoe Quinn was leading documentation efforts. Emily Walsh, nearly caught in a planted sabotage, was recovering data with trembling hands. But this wasn't over. Amara raised her hand and said, Derek, patch me through to Horizon Star's control operations. Derek tapped a comm switch by the cockpit door. This is Acting Commander Kingston, requesting a direct uplink to Ops Central. Priority override. A moment passed. Then, this is Ops Central. Go ahead, Ms. Kingston. I want this flight officially reassigned. Destination rerouted to Boston Executive Terminal. All FAA notifications initiated. And I want all remaining Horizon Star flight crews notified. New ownership is in effect as of 10:15 a.m. today. Another pause. Confirmed. Flight reassignment in motion. FAA and charter control receiving transmission now. A few passengers gasped. Lucas whispered, She's turning the plane around. Maya looked at Amara. Why Boston? Because that's where Horizon Star's East Coast headquarters is, Amara said. And we're not just cleaning house, we're walking through the front door. The passengers looked at each other. A flight that began in silence was now a mission. Suddenly, Lena's tablet vibrated again. New ping, she said. A system notification from inside Charter Ops. It's from someone named Hannah Osei. Amara's eyes lit up. Put her through. A woman's voice filtered into the cabin, calm, clear-accented. Ms. Kingston, I'm with Charter Control East. I've been watching this unfold. Elaine blacklisted my cousin 2 years ago. She never got an explanation. Just erased. I'm routing you confirmation that your new policies are taking hold across our servers. Amara blinked. You've already implemented the new access parameters I have. The pilots are being sent new onboarding protocols. All security levels below Director have been downgraded pending verification. We've had this rot a long time. You just pulled the roots. Lena smiled. This is real. Gregory stood from his seat. The FAA has just greenlit the reassignment. You now have full control to reroute Flight HQ authority to Freedom Air protocols. Zoe looked at Amara. Are you really going to the HQ? Today, Amara nodded. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. And not to ask permission, but to post notice. She stepped into the cockpit, placed her hand on the pilot chair, not to fly, but to symbolize something larger. Reclaiming the space. She tapped the intercom. This is Amara Kingston, chairwoman of Freedom Air Elite. Her voice echoed through the jet. This flight has been rerouted, not due to weather, not due to maintenance, but due to truth. Every passenger leaned forward. We're not just turning the plane, we're turning the policy, the prejudice, and the culture. She paused. For everyone who has ever sat in silence, this turn is for you. Then the climax. A knock at the aircraft's rear stairs. Derek opened the hatch to reveal 2 federal agents, jackets marked with DOT and FAA. We're here to collect data logs, one said. We've been briefed on Elaine Marraro and the manifest alteration. Amara stepped forward. You'll get full access, and I'll be accompanying you to HQ. One agent raised a brow. That won't be necessary. It is, Amara said, unwavering, because I'm not here to witness the reform. I'm here to lead it. The cabin erupted, not in chaos, but quiet approval. Zoe stepped forward with the sealed folder of logs and complaints. Gregory handed over digital keys. Emily added her name to the witness chain. Even Marcus Denton gave a nod. Let's finish what we started. The jet would no longer fly the same route, not just in the air, but in history. The jet descended through a veil of soft morning fog, Boston's skyline shimmering in the distance, like a city still unaware of the storm headed straight for it. Inside the Falcon 7X, no one spoke as wheels touched down. This wasn't a landing. It was an arrival. Derek's voice came over the intercom. Cabin crew, prepare doors for arrival. Welcome to Boston Executive Terminal. Zoe adjusted her jacket. Maya straightened the sleeve of her blazer. Emily Walsh held a tablet full of personnel logs, fingers tight with resolve. Amara didn't stand yet. She simply looked out the window, eyes fixed on the gray tarmac, stretching toward a building she once wasn't allowed to enter. The corporate headquarters of Horizon Star Charter waited behind tall glass panels and rotating doors, unaware it was moments away from being entered by its new owner on her terms. Lena leaned over. Security team has arrived from Kingston Aviation. Legal counsel is en route. We're cleared for internal audit sweep the moment we walk through those doors. Amara rose slowly from seat 1A. Then, let's make history. The aircraft door opened. 2 charter officials, stiff in dark gray uniforms, stood waiting at the foot of the stairs. Ms. Kingston, one said tightly. We were told to escort you to conference room 7A. On whose orders? Maya asked, stepping forward. Mr. Gregory Penhall, executive chair of the board. He's been removed, Lena said. Didn't you receive the transition memo? The official looked uneasy. We've seen the notices, but Penhall says no ownership change is recognized until in-person board ratification. Amara stepped onto the tarmac heels, clicking with absolute finality. Then let's ratify it. They walked in silence. Zoe Maya, Emily, Derek Lena, flanking Amara like a council of witnesses. Inside the marble lobby, a hush fell over reception. Staff froze as they passed. Some eyes widened in surprise. Others quickly turned away. The group moved swiftly to the elevators. On the 17th floor outside conference room 7A, the doors opened to reveal a group of Horizon Star executives seated behind a wide, polished oak table. At the head, Gregory Penhall, gray-haired, sharp-jawed, flanked by 2 lawyers and an HR director. Penhall didn't rise. Ms. Kingston, he said, this is an internal board session. Your presence is neither recognized nor required. Amara didn't blink. I'm not asking permission. She slid a leather folder across the table. Ownership transfer. Signed. Filed. Federally registered. As of 10:15 this morning, I am the majority shareholder and executive chair of Horizon Star Charters. Penhall smirked. We'll contest it. You won't, Lena said calmly, placing a second folder in front of him. Because the FAA DOT and Civil Rights Division have launched a coordinated investigation. Any obstruction now will be considered interference in an active federal case. A beat. Then the climax. Zoe stepped forward. This isn't just about Amara, she said. She opened a manila envelope and pulled out 8 printed bias complaints, some with her own initials. These documents were suppressed. By your HR chain. Under Elaine Mararo's instructions. I was ordered to shred them. Penhall's face paled. Emily added, I was denied hours and rotations for challenging the elite optics policy. You called it market profiling. I call it discrimination. Maya tossed a tablet on the table. You've got a choice. Help us dismantle this system or be named in it. Penhall gripped the edge of the table. What do you want? Amara leaned forward. I want every crew member who was silenced to be reinstated, reviewed, and repaid. I want every passenger complaint relogged. And I want your resignation letter by the end of the day. He sneered. This company was built on standards. No, Amara said. It was built on silence. I'm replacing both. The room held its breath. Penhall finally stood. This isn't the end. Amara met his eyes. No, it's the beginning. He left the room without another word. Lena turned to Amara. You now have the floor. Amara looked around the table then at her team. Then let's rebuild it. The long mahogany table in conference room 7A still bore the faint warmth of power. But the temperature was shifting. Not because of air conditioning, because Amara Kingston had taken her seat at its head. No longer in the margins. No longer behind the glass. At the center. Across from her sat Lena Zoe Maya, Emily Gregory Liu, and Derek. All of them now de facto board members in the most radical reshaping of Horizon Star's charter in decades. Amara opened her leather folder and slid a single piece of paper across the table. This, she said, is the first document under our new leadership. Zoe leaned in. The new flight manifest. Amara nodded. Not just names. A new policy. The header read, Freedom Manifest Protocol. Effective immediately, all manifests must include passenger name, verified ID, demographic fairness audit tag, access log timestamps, crew-signed declaration of ethical boarding. Emily blinked. This reverses every hidden override Elaine ever used. It doesn't just reverse them, Amara said. It shines a light on them. Every flight will be logged, backed up, and monitored through independent review. No one will ever again be silently removed. Gregory Liu added, and we'll be issuing new crew manifest training nationwide. Mandatory. Non-compliance leads to immediate review and grounding. Maya raised a hand. Let's also add a third-party verification protocol, something passengers can access if they suspect bias. Done, Lena said, already typing into her tablet. Then a beat. A knock. Derek opened the conference room door. A woman stood there, elegant, composed, visibly unsure if she belonged. I'm sorry, she said. I was told there might be an opening on the transition oversight team. My name is Professor Evelyn Chambers. I teach aviation ethics at MIT. Amara stood. I read your paper, she said, about legacy bias in cockpit culture. Come in. Your voice belongs here. Chambers entered. Maya whispered. She used to consult for Horizon Star until they ghosted her after she questioned their profiling stats. Zoe looked stunned. She's the reason I applied to flight school. Amara turned to the group. This is the new manifest, not just passengers, but people, experts, storytellers, truth holders. Chambers nodded. Then I have one proposal. Let every future manifest include an audit of previous passenger treatment, track complaint patterns, flag recurring crew behavior. Amara didn't hesitate. Approved. Just then, the climax. An alert flashed across Lena's screen. Breaking news, she said. The story's gone national. Headline reads, Black woman denied first-class seat, buys the airline implement civil rights boarding policy within hours. Zoe gasped. Gregory whispered, We're trending. Lena scrolled. FAA just released a statement supporting your reform effort. Dow T says you'll be invited to present a new standard of bias prevention protocol at the next National Aviation Summit. Amara exhaled slowly. The jet she had boarded hours ago, with nothing but a confirmed seat and a quiet mind, had become the launchpad for something bigger. Not revenge. Reform. She turned to the new board. This is the new manifest. She said again, it doesn't just show who's on the plane, it shows who belongs. 2 hours after landing in Boston, Amara Kingston's leadership reforms were making national headlines. But as the ink dried on policy, resistance was already rising. Inside, Horizon Star's headquarters conference room 7A had transformed into a command center. Amara, Maya, Lena, Zoe, Gregory, Derek, and Professor Evelyn Chambers were drafting what would become the most progressive aviation equity mandate in the industry. But legacy doesn't surrender quietly. And just as Lena finalized the public statement for Freedom Air Elite's internal reforms, a voice crackled over her secured comm channel incoming request. Caller Bernard Sloan. Title Horizon Star Co-founder Board Emeritus. Everyone in the room went still. Maya whispered, That's the man who originally wrote Horizon Star's elite passenger code, the one used to justify all the tiered access decisions. Put him through, Amara said. A moment later, the voice of a man in his 70s echoed through the speaker, polished, cautious, but unmistakably sharp. Ms. Kingston, I've been briefed on your actions. Bold, to say the least. Amara's voice was calm. They're not actions. They're corrections. Be that as it may, you've disrupted a legacy system that served a specific clientele. Which clientele, Maya interjected. The kind that paid with bias instead of boarding passes. We crafted a brand. You're dismantling it. No, Amara replied. I'm grounding the old one. What flies next will serve everyone, not just the few you considered palatable. A silence hung. Then Bernard spoke again. I built this airline. You're attempting to erase my life's work. You built the building, Amara said, but you forgot the foundation had cracks. I'm not erasing you, Mr. Sloan. I'm rewriting what you refused to revise. He sighed. You're making powerful enemies. I've already made them, Amara said, standing. And I'm not afraid to be the storm they never prepared for. Then the climax. Lena's tablet beeped violently. System alert, she said. Someone from Legacy Systems Division just triggered a bulk data export. Attempting to offload passenger demographics and crew rotations from the last 5 years, Emily gasped. They're trying to cover their trail. Gregory moved fast. I'm initiating a lockdown on data port 17 through 32. Backdoor channels will be cut. Zoe shouted. There's a terminal in legal archives. It's still connected to the old server. If someone has access credentials, they could be trying to purge everything. Derek was already moving. On it. He sprinted out of the room. Amara turned to Lena. Flag every single IP associated with Sloan or his old administrative aliases. Maya was dialing FAA compliance. We'll make it a federal obstruction case if they touch one byte. Moments later, Derek returned, breathing hard. Caught him. He opened the door and shoved it aside to reveal a man in a tan suit sweating with a flash drive in his hand. I know him, Zoe said. That's Charles Devlin. He was Mararo's liaison with the old ethics board. Gregory opened a secure bin. Put it in. Devlin resisted. Do it, Amara ordered. He dropped the drive in. Gregory sealed it. Derek snapped cuffs around Devlin's wrists, plastic zips not for cruelty, but consequence. Amara faced him. What were you trying to delete? Devlin looked smug even then. Everything Elaine trained us to flag. Everything you were going to weaponize against us. Amara didn't flinch. You just confessed to conspiracy to destroy federally relevant data during an active investigation. His face fell. Zoe stepped forward. You tried to erase me. All of us. Devlin shook his head. You're changing rules that made this airline elite. No, Amara replied. I'm changing what elite means. And with that, she turned back to her board. Lena. Let's finish publishing the reform plan. Lena tapped Submit. Across the aviation world, a new standard went live. The Legacy fought back. But it was already losing altitude. The air was different now, not just inside Horizon Star's headquarters, but across terminals, lounges, staff forums, and social media channels nationwide. The tremor Amara Kingston had triggered with her refusal to move from Seat 1A was now a wave, a current, a cultural shift. At exactly 3:00 p.m. EST, Lena tapped her tablet, streaming a live press conference from Freedom Air Elite's interim boardroom, once Horizon Star's executive conference suite. Amara stood center stage, the new company seal behind her. No longer the gold falcon on Navy. Now a rising horizon over silver wings. A symbol not of hierarchy, but of hope. She wore no designer logo, no flashy badge of wealth, just a sharp navy blazer, a white blouse, and the calm certainty of a woman who knew she'd earned her place long before the world admitted it. Her voice, when it came, was steady. Today marks the official dissolution of Horizon Star Charters and the rebirth of this airline as Freedom Air Elite. Cameras clicked. Screens lit up. In its place rises a new standard, one that does not tolerate bias, does not overlook dignity, and will never again allow silence to masquerade as protocol. She paused. In the skies we share, we will now share respect. The press leaned in. Maya stood to her left. Lena just behind. Zoe Quinn, wearing her full-flight uniform again this time, without shame. Emily, now leading HR transition and audit. Gregory Liu as general counsel. And at the rear, Derek Vance in polished black, no longer an enforcer, but an ally. Amara continued. We have implemented the Freedom Manifest Protocol. We have suspended every crew member involved in civil rights violations and enacted immediate third-party audit controls. Every future employee from pilot to gate agent will undergo equity certification. She looked directly into the camera. If you ever felt dismissed, doubted, downgraded, you were never the problem. The system was. Then the climax. A hand rose from the press pool. Yes, Amara asked. A reporter in a gray suit stood. Jason Heller, Aviation Insider. Your transition was aggressive. There are shareholders who feel threatened. Critics call your leadership style divisive. What do you say to them? Amara didn't miss a beat. I'm not here to comfort power. I'm here to correct it. A hush fell. Zoe stepped up beside her. I was a flight attendant under the old system. I watched passengers of color treated like intrusions, not clients. I carried guilt for every cup of coffee I delivered with a forced smile after seeing a seat reassigned mid-air. Her voice cracked, but didn't falter. Today, I stand beside a woman who told us we could start again. Amara gently took Zoe's hand, then raised her chin. Let the critics say what they must. They're no longer in the cockpit. She tapped her tablet, triggering the final transition. Every Horizon Star website app crew ID and terminal display flickered, then changed. Freedom Air Elite. New color scheme. New slogan. New policy at every gate. Respect isn't premium, it's standard. On the cabin monitors of every still airborne Falcon 7X and Gulfstream, the change went live. Passengers watched as Legacy died and Equity took flight. Imani Wells, in her apartment in Atlanta, saw the update pop up on her screen. She wept. Harold Deakins. The retired captain emailed Amara a single sentence: the skies have never felt lighter. In offices across America, HR departments scrambled. Competing airlines called emergency meetings. FAA inboxes overflowed. Because Freedom Air wasn't just rebranding, it was redefining. Amara stepped down from the podium and turned to her team. We're not done, no, Maya said. We're just airborne. The morning after Freedom Air Elite went live, the headlines hadn't cooled. News anchors debated Amara Kingston's overnight transformation of Horizon Star charters. Some called it revolutionary. Others called it reckless. But inside the Freedom Air headquarters, Amara knew the real turbulence hadn't started yet. Because Legacy doesn't just fade, it retaliates. Lena entered the command room, holding a printed envelope with no return address. Hand-delivered, she said. No sender, just this. Amara opened it. Inside was a legal summons. Class action grievance, she read aloud. Filed by former Horizon Star executives, claiming breach of board process, hostile takeover, and defamation of corporate culture. Maya raised an eyebrow. Defamation of culture. They're trying to weaponize nostalgia, Lena muttered. Gregory Liu reviewed the document. Filed in Delaware court, of course. Corporate law haven. They won't win, Amara said. But they can stall, Gregory warned. If the court issues a temporary injunction, your reforms freeze. Zoe looked stunned. They want to make her illegal. Maya stood. We go on offense. Publish every suppressed complaint. Tie the lawsuit to the same bias they ignored for years. Agreed, Lena said. We fight in public and in court. But Amara raised her hand. Not yet. Everyone paused. Let them move first. Let them show the world exactly who's trying to bury progress in policy paperwork. Just then, the climax. Lena's tablet beeped. We have a breach alert. Gregory frowned. Again. This one's different. It's a login from inside one of the private investor VPN tunnels. She tapped rapidly. Accessing archived hiring records. They're scrubbing old applicant data. The system shows that minority candidates were deliberately filtered by name and zip code over a 3-year period. Maya gasped. "They're deleting the red line trails." Gregory snapped. "Lock it down. Preserve a digital image of everything." Amara stepped closer. "Can we prove it's them?" Lena nodded. IP address tracks back to the law firm representing the old board. Zoe clenched her fists. "They're erasing the truth." Amara's jaw tightened. "Then we go live." 10 minutes later, Amara appeared on Freedom Air Elite's emergency press live stream. "I've just received a legal summons from those who once ruled this airline," she said. "Their lawsuit does not frighten me. It exposes them." She held up the paper. "They claim I hijacked a legacy, but what I did was land the truth." Cameras clicked. Maya and Zoe stood behind her, silent but strong. Gregory stepped up next. "We've preserved digital proof that old hiring filters disqualified applicants based on names, zip codes, and racial identifiers. They're attempting to delete that now." Amara added, "But systems forget. Witnesses do not. We do not." And then she dropped the line that would trend for days. "If your legacy can't survive exposure, it was never worth protecting." Gasps rippled across every newsroom. Twitter exploded. In less than an hour, Expose, the legacy trended worldwide. News networks replayed her words. Amara didn't celebrate. She turned to her team. "Prepare every internal audit file. Upload everything to the cloud. And notify every former applicant we can find. They deserve to know." The old guard had struck. But now the public was watching. Within 48 hours of Amara Kingston's press broadcast, the world had changed. Not just on paper, in spirit. Thousands of former passenger staffers rejected applicants, and everyday flyers flooded Freedom Air Elite's online portal. The comment sections filled with long overdue confessions, pain, solidarity, and support. One post from a retired black pilot named Jerome Carter read, "I was told my accent didn't sound reassuring enough for first-class routes. I swallowed it. For years." Today, I watched Amara Kingston say what none of us dared. "I'm finally exhaling." A single mother from Detroit posted a video with tears in her eyes. "They downgraded me after I boarded with my son because his hair was too messy. Today, Freedom Air emailed me a formal apology and offered a full refund. No one ever did that before. Thank you, Ms. Kingston." Even international stories surfaced. A Filipino-American crew member from Los Angeles posted an old rejection letter redacted for non-conformity with brand expectations. Her caption, "That brand's gone now." And that was only the beginning. Zoe and Maya spent hours triaging responses from whistleblowers. Gregory coordinated with pro bono legal groups. Emily worked with Lena to publish a searchable complaint archive online where passengers could see how many others had experienced the same quiet dismissal. And Amara She didn't rest. She called press. She emailed regulators. She reached out to grassroots organizations across aviation hospitality and public service. "We're building something bigger than flights," she told Maya. "We're building flight equity." Then, the climax. Lena rushed into the conference room, holding a tablet. "Amara, you need to see this." A young Latina woman appeared on screen. Her name was Gabriela Cortez. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "My mother cleaned Horizon Star lounges for 11 years, she said. Never made above minimum wage. Never had health care. When she passed away last year, no one at the company sent a letter. Not even a condolence." Gabriela's voice broke. "But yesterday, Freedom Air Elite sent me a scholarship offer. Said they found my resume from 2 years ago in a discarded system queue. I was flagged for overqualification. But now they say I'm invited to train as a regional flight supervisor. She wiped a tear. Someone told me I was seen. The video went viral. Within 6 hours, over 4.7 million views. A New York Times headline read, "From ignored to empowered, Freedom Air's reforms spark civil rights revival in the skies." Cable panels debated if this marked a new civil aviation era. But in Amara's conference room, there was no debate. Only resolve. She turned to Zoe. "I want 10 more stories like Gabriella's shared this week." Maya smiled. "We'll have 100. Then Lena added, "One more thing. The Secretary of Transportation has requested a meeting. They want your framework reviewed as a national template." Amara blinked. National Gregory grinned. "Looks like Freedom Air is just the beginning." Amara nodded, letting it land. The public had taken flight, and the sky had never looked clearer. 3 weeks after Amara Kingston rebranded Horizon Star into Freedom Air Elite, the remnants of the old empire began to crack under the weight of their own silence. At first, it was subtle. A minor investor withdrawal here. A few resignations from legacy board members there. But then came the subpoenas. The Department of Transportation issued a federal investigation into discriminatory seat reassignments across a 5-year span. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission opened a probe into redlining practices embedded within Horizon Star's hiring algorithm. And then the IRS joined. Because where discrimination lurks, financial cover-ups often follow. Gregory Liu updated the team from a war room whiteboard scrawled with timelines. "We've confirmed that 5 former executives knowingly withheld bias audit results to secure tax exemptions through DEI incentive programs. That's not just unethical, it's fraud." Amara paced slowly, eyes steady. "What's our exposure?" Zero Gregory said. "You weren't on record until the buyout, but they're exposed. Deeply." Maya crossed her arms. "So why aren't they folding yet?" "They will," Lena said, tapping her screen, "because the final blow just landed." She turned the tablet around. It showed a digital scan of a leaked email from Elaine Marraro, the ousted captain. Subject line: Flight Environment, Threat Protocol, Visual Profiling Guidelines. It listed identifiers like unnatural hairstyles, visible cultural garments, accent cues deemed regionally non-standard the timestamp a month before Amara's flight. Zoe gasped. "That's the smoking gun." Lena nodded. "We traced the recipient list. It went to 8 regional managers. 7 of them are now gone." Amara took the tablet. She wrote the doctrine of discrimination and signed it. Then the climax. The door burst open. A junior staffer from legal rushed in. "Emergency call from the court," she said. "The old board's class action suit has been dismissed with prejudice. Judge ruled that the ownership transition was valid, ethical, and executed under lawful emergency corrective governance." The room went still, then erupted. Maya hugged Zoe. Gregory slammed a fist on the table, grinning. "We just buried the empire." But Amara didn't cheer. She stood in silence, absorbing the moment. Then quietly said, "Let's make sure it stays buried." Later that afternoon, Amara walked the floor of the old executive wing. The portraits of former chairmen had already been removed. She entered the former office of Bernard Sloan, its shelves still full of untouched books and framed photos of first-class lounges and golden cufflink galas. She placed one new item on the shelf. A framed copy of Gabriela Cortez's scholarship letter. Beneath it, a plaque. "In this room, power once ignored truth. Now it listens." The old empire had fallen, and in its place, something freer was flying. The aircraft was silent again. But this time, it wasn't tension. It was reverence. Freedom Air Elite's inaugural flight lifted gently into the morning sky. Its engines steady its course, sure. Passengers looked out the windows not just to see clouds, but to witness history in motion. Amara Kingston sat in seat 1A. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was the loudest statement of all. Zoe Quinn walked the aisle with renewed confidence, her navy uniform crisp her shoulders back. She'd stayed. She'd testified. And now she served something she believed in. Behind her, Maya Torres handed a civil rights pamphlet to a young black girl seated near the window. The child stared in awe more at Amara than the view outside. "She's the reason we're here," Maya whispered. On the cabin screens, a message cycled in elegant script, "Welcome aboard, Freedom Air Elite. Where dignity is not upgraded, it's included." From Boston to Oakland, Johannesburg to Tokyo, stories poured in. Schools built lesson plans around Amara's stand. Activists referenced her reforms in congressional hearings. Other airlines began quietly adjusting policies, some for fear of lawsuits, others from genuine reckoning. In Washington, a senator held up Freedom Air's equity audit as a gold standard. In Atlanta, Gabriela Cortez's mother's name was added to a commemorative lounge plaque. In Detroit, Jerome Carter was invited to train the next class of pilots for the first time in 14 years. And in the Freedom Air hangar, a new aircraft was unveiled. Its tail bore the name, the Kingston Skies. Then the emotional climax. As the inaugural flight began its descent, Amara stood. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Martin Wells. It is my profound honor to welcome you to the first landing of Freedom Air Elite. And before we touch down, I'd like to give the final word to the person who made this possible." A chime echoed. All eyes turned. Amara stepped to the front of the cabin. "Most people think legacy is what you leave behind," she said. "But I've learned it's something you carry forward." She looked around the cabin at Zoe Maya, Lena, Derek Gregory, and Gabriella seated 2 rows back beside her little brother. For too long, we let power decide who belonged, who boarded, who deserved to sit in silence. But not anymore. She paused. "My name is Amara Kingston. I was asked to give up my seat. Instead, I bought the airline." Soft laughter. Tears. She continued, "And I didn't do it for revenge. I did it so that one day when your daughter boards a plane, no one questions her presence." The wheels touched the runway. A gentle thud. The passengers clapped not wildly, but with something deeper. Something earned. Amara smiled. "You're not flying above the world anymore," she said. "You're rising inside it." Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching and see you next time.